Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week of Food as Medicine. My name is Audrey Koma, and today we'll be talking about how to read and understand food labels. Just a disclaimer, any products that are seen or shown or talked about in today's presentation are merely just used as examples and are not endorsements by Purdue Extension. So today we'll be talking about how to identify components of a food label. We'll understand and interpret the marketing labels, so the nutrition claims and the health claims. We'll talk more about nutrition facts and learn how to read them. And after today's presentation, the hope is that you'll be able to understand food labeling and be able to make healthier and informed decisions based off of what we learned today. So why do we have food labels? They provide us with information that we as consumers cannot confirm. Food labels, for example, tell us about how much food is in the package. They tell us any safe handling instructions we might have, like the temperature to cook food. It might tell us where the food was made. It might tell us if any allergens are present. So all the information we cannot confirm. So the food label gives us that information. Just a side note, supplements are not considered food, so they're not regulated by the FDA. So also things like protein powders, vitamins, energy drinks, they have little to no regulation by the FDA, and so those should be used cautiously. So the USDA and the FDA are the two large agencies that are responsible for food labels. The USDA is in charge of meat, poultry, and egg products, and the FDA essentially covers everything outside of those three main components. So for example, if a meat wanted to put grass-fed on it, it would have to receive prior approval before it can put that label on the packaging. So the USDA, based off of that, you can tell that it needs to have prior approval before it can put labels on products. So the USDA needs prior approval before it can put labels on packages. But the FDA does not require prior approval. And that means that the food companies are in charge of making sure that their products information was based off of existing literature or databases. So the food companies are in charge of doing their own research, essentially. And so food suppliers can develop product definitions and standards on their own, and that may be regulated by third parties and suppliers. So now I'll be talking more about food labels. So these are the main components that are required when it comes to food labels. So the first one, letter A, is a statement of identity. So that essentially just describes the product and a common name of that food. The second one is the net weight or content statement. So that tells you the weight by the weight of the container, the food that is inside, by weight, volume, or numerical count. So how much of the product is in that container. And it's usually located on the lower 30% of the container. And then letter C, it just gives information about where the manufacturer is, the packer, the distributor. So you can include their zip code, the business name, the city it was made. And then D and E we'll talk more about in the next couple of slides to come. So D is the ingredient statement, and that lists the ingredients in the product and is found below nutrition facts. These ingredients are labeled in order, in descending order. So from the food that is the first one usually has the largest amount by weight, and then the least is the last item on the list, and that has the least amount by weight. So in our example, the top example in the first box, wheat flour is the first, it would have the largest amount by weight. And the last item on the list would have the lowest amount by weight. So allergen labeling is required in food products that contain, it was 8, but now 9 of the major food allergens. So eggs, milk, wheat, soy, peanuts, fish, shellfish, and the ninth one is sesame. So the type of tree nut and type of fish and the type of shellfish must also be listed. And there are over 160 types of food allergens that have been identified, but these 9 make up over 90% documented food allergies, and they're the ones that usually cause the more severe life-threatening reactions. So allergens can be identified in 2 different ways in the label. So it can be either contained within the ingredient statement, as you can see in the first yellow box in parentheses, or it can be in a contained statement below the ingredient list, as you can see in the second box. So they're usually one of the 2 ways in which allergens are presented in food labels. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about nutrition fact labels. So the first line tells you the serving per container, and this is the total amount of servings in the entire food packet or container. The second line is the serving size, and that's usually based on the amount of food that people typically eat at one sitting, but that is not the recommendation of how much you should be eating. The serving size is usually also shown in common household measurements, so it can be in cups, tablespoons, pieces, slices. Those are some examples of the units. And then we also have the calories per serving. So calories describes energy that is supplied from food. Our bodies need that energy to function, grow, and also to thrive. And they're usually based off a 2,000 calorie diet. But again, how many calories you consume is dependent on different factors like your age, your sex, your height, your weight, and your level of physical activity. Next, we have the percent daily value, so PDV, and that tells you how much a nutrient in a serving of food contributes to your total daily diet. So for example, if a label has 20% DV, daily value for calcium, that means that one serving gives you 20% of the calcium that you need for the day. And then there's also the 5-20 rule. So 5% DV, daily value, or less of a nutrient per serving is considered low, and 20% is considered high. So things like the trans fat, the sugar, we would want sodium, we wanted those to be less, so close to the 5%. And nutrients like fiber, different vitamins and minerals, we want those closer to the 20%. Trans fats, sugar, and protein usually do not have a daily value percentage on them. A food is usually labeled has the DV for protein if it is said to have if it is said to be high in protein. That's usually when it has a percent daily value for protein. And there's no recommendations on the amount of sugar that is to be consumed, so that also does not have a daily value as well. Not all fats are created equal. Fats are good for us in our bodies. We need them for growth and development, for some soluble vitamins like vitamins K, A, D, and E. They help our body in different ways, provides energy, but it also depends on the amount of fat and the type of fat. So the fats that we don't want, that aren't healthy, are saturated fats and the trans fat. Saturated fat is found in a variety of foods, like in animal products, like in meats and poultry and dairy products. You can also find them in foods like in snacks, in sweets, in butter, margarine, cream cheese, sour cream. And then we also have trans fat that is naturally found in small amounts in animal products like meat and dairy products, but usually artificially made with hydrogenated oils. So usually has, you can find it in foods like baked goods, coffee creamers, fast food, frozen pizza. Those are the type of places you can find trans fats. But hydrogenated oils has recently been seen to be unsafe, and so majority of food labels now should not, almost all of them actually, should not have trans fats on the food labels anymore, as of, I believe, January 2020. Then we have the monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. Unsaturated fats are the good fats, so those are the ones you want to consume more of, and they're heart healthy. They can be found in avocados, different nuts and fish and oils. And these are voluntarily listed on food labels. So food companies do not have to put the unsaturated fats on there. Added sugar is a new part of the food labels that they added. It is under the total carbohydrate section. And added sugar includes sugar that's either added during processing of the food or is packaged as such. So like table sugar, syrups, or honey. You can see looking at the graph that some foods are higher than others in added sugar. Beverages are one of the higher components when it comes to added sugar. That's your main source of added sugar. We also have sweets and snacks, grains, dairies, condiments. So there's different places where you can find added sugar. Sugar also comes in different shapes and sizes in terms of names. And so anything that has like syrup in it, anything that usually ends in OSE are usually types of syrup. So maltose, sucrose, dextrose, fructose, those are all sugar. And so there's different ways and names for sugar. So if you see a long list of ingredients and doesn't have the word sugar in it, that doesn't necessarily mean there's no sugar in it. There are different ways that you can see on your right-hand side, different ways to say sugar that is in your food. Now I'll be talking about voluntary information that is put on food labels. Manufacturers they provide the product date on food labels, and these are not expiration dates, which a lot of people think they are. It just tells you when's the best time to eat the food and get the best quality of it. So when you see best if used by, sell by, used by, those are examples that tell you when the food is at its best quality. But usually after those dates, the food is still safe to consume. About 30%, even close to 40% of food is being wasted because people misunderstand the dating that is put on food. So again, those are not expiration dates. Those are just dates that tell you when the food is at its best qualities. The only exception is infant formula. Dates that are put on infant formula are expiration dates, and those are the ones you should go by. So there are various terms that have been used to describe nutrients that are in food. One of them is nutrition claims. So there's a word or a phrase on a package that makes a comment about the nutritional value of the food. These claims are not regulated by the FDA, so they're not pre-approved by the FDA. And so similarly, that means that the food company will have to do their own research to make sure that the information is accurate. And these phrases are often used as marketing strategies. So if you want to really know what the nutritional value of the food you're buying is, always, always, always flip back to the food label and read what's on there for yourselves. Similarly, another marketing strategy are health claims. And those are food labels that give a message about the relationship between a food and a health condition. Again, similarly, they are not regulated. They do not need pre-approval by the FDA. And so the companies need to provide credible information from existing literature and databases to ensure that the food is safe and accurate. So for example, if you look at a health claim example from the Cheerios box, you'll see that Cheerios claims it can lower cholesterol. And we see additional statements stating that a diet low in saturated fat and cholesterol can reduce the risk of heart disease. But this is not a direct claim, so the FDA allows it. So again, they're not direct relationships. They are trying to make connections between a health claim and a health condition. When it comes to labeling for meat and poultry, there's a lot of different terms and terminologies that might be confusing or very overwhelming for people. So these are a couple of labels that you may see on meat and poultry labeling. This is not an exhaustive list, but it is more of the common ones that people may see when you are shopping. A really common one is organic. So USDA organic products have strict production and labeling requirements. So organic products must be produced with no genetic engineering, ionization, radiation, or sewage sludge. And also organic does not mean pesticide-free. I think a lot of people confuse organic with being pesticide-free. Organic does not mean pesticide-free. They can use non-synthetic pesticides, which are still pesticides. And some products can be labeled organic without being certified if the operations are, including organic farmers, sell products that are less than $5,000. So looking at food labels, sometimes based off of the appearance of the food packaging, it may seem like an item is healthier or better than the other. As you can kind of see looking at the two, I'm sure you may agree or think that the one on the right looks healthier than the other one. But as we said before, if you want to see the true nutrition of the food, always flip to the back and look at the food label. So as you can see, the one on the right that appears to be healthier actually has more sodium than the one on the left. It has 520 milligrams as compared to the one on the left that has 450 milligrams. So again, just because it might look healthier and it has nutrition claims and the health claim does not necessarily mean that it is healthier. So always make sure that you flip the back and read the food label to see what is actually in the food that you're buying. Another example is salt, whether it's iodized salt, sea salt, they all have the same amount of sodium in them. So sometimes people might think Himalayan salt or sea salt might be healthier than regular salt, but they're all still salt. Again, if you flip the back to look at nutrition labels and look at sodium to really see how much salt is in the product. Again, these are other food labels that you may see on products. There's additive-free, natural, non-GMO, gluten-free. Again, these are all voluntary labels, so they do not have to be put on there, but sometimes food companies might put those on there because people might think that it's healthier or better if it has those labels on there. But again, to understand and know what you're consuming, always flip to the back of the food product and read nutrition label. Something else to keep in mind is other labeling, like something being low in fat or low in sodium. Oftentimes, if it is low in sodium, they will add in more sugar or fat to compensate for the lack in flavor or the texture of the product, and vice versa. Something is low in fat. It might have more sugar, it might have more sodium in it to compensate for that lack of flavor or texture. So again, to really understand what you're consuming, look at the food labels. Sometimes something being low in a certain nutrient, they might add other bad things to compensate for the flavor and the texture. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that it is the healthier option. But again, just to reiterate, if you want to know the true nutrient that is in the food you're consuming, make sure to always flip the back and look at the nutrition label. The FDA and USDA are a great resource. If you have any more questions or want to learn more, I would recommend looking at those websites for credible information about food labels. Thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to call our office or send me an email. And we look forward to seeing you at our next session.